Well, hey there, oldies. Welcome to That Old Soul Show, or as I like to call it, TOSS for short. I'm your host, Sarah, here to take you on a nostalgic joyride where timeless tunes meet visionary views. Each week, we're diving into the sounds that move us, the videos that lit up our screens, and the artful films that made us feel something. This is the show for the old souls with fresh takes, celebrating everything from timeless classics to groundbreaking visuals and cinematic masterpieces that push boundaries. So, grab your headphones, turn up the volume, and let's vibe through the rhythms, reels, and stories that make life unforgettable. Welcome to That Old Soul Show. Okay, you guys, we're just going to jump right into today's episode. I don't want to waste any time. We are talking about the music and also primarily the music videos of 2024. Now, at first, I wasn't going to put them in order from least to top, least to greatest. But as I was working on my outline and just gathering my thoughts, I was like, okay, some of these I have a lot to say something about it, and then others, not so much. So we're just going to start off with number 10. Coming in at number 10, we've got The Architect by Kacey Musgraves. Let's go into a country song. This video was directed by Lewis Carter, and what really sold it for me was the use of nature in this visual, which the way this music video was directed and produced and constructed wasn't super on the nose. I would say the only thing that was on the nose was the apple she was holding in the beginning. But other than that, the video went perfectly with the theme and the lyrics of the song. But also it was just a really clean video, visually speaking. This is because you've got the browns, the greens, the mud covering her body, anything that really represents the nature aspect, right? The trees, the flowers. The video really didn't need a lot, yet there was a lot to admire, like her putting the grass together as puzzle pieces. And then, of course, the very last shot is of this beautiful blue sky, which is just simple perfection and adds a layer of color, breaking away from the greens and the browns of nature. Coming in at number 10, we have Juna by Clairo. Now, I would consider this more alternative. It was directed by Bradley J. Calder. This visual was a random find for me one day. I was just on YouTube, just, looking for music videos as I often do, and I instantly fell in love with like the absurdity of this visual, if you will. You've got boxers, a boxing match, and just in the beginning, she's just simply admiring them. And I think that's what really drew me to it, because it was like, what's going on here? Is she in love with one of these boxers? And then it kind of turns into this boxing match, and there's spectators, and she's drinking wine, and there's pizza in the background. And then it goes back to just her alone, and then it's her surrounded by the boxers, and she's got the winner's belt across her shoulder, and she almost just looks super melancholy, just very chill, And I also love the ending and how like the spectators kind of became a part of the song and the visual in a way of like interacting with the song, singing the song along with her. So that's why it came in at number 9. Moving over to number 8, I gotta give it to my girl Saweetie. She came out with My Best, and this was directed by Water Whippin' Evan and Saweetie. And I think why this made the list for me is I really enjoyed the simplicity again of this visual and how she's kind of taking it back to her roots. Literally, I mean, we're at her high school. And I also really enjoyed how there were clever moments of graphics being used, of the lyrics like on the whiteboards. I really thought that was a nice, clever touch. I always like how you can incorporate the lyrics or incorporate some kind of graphic in the visual that just adds another layer. I also really like the cinematography. We go back and forth a little bit between like a home video look and like the original like 4K video quality. And, at the end, I just had more respect for her. Just gained more respect for her in that she just stripped it down. We went back to her roots, and that's really kind of what made me like her in the first place with, her first EP. I loved that she was still pretty girl, right? Icy girl. And I don't know, I just like the rawness. I like how at the end of the video, we're adding that home video quality, right? Where she's performing at her talent show and you hear her sister in the background, like, yeah, that's my sister. And then also, like, did not know Miss Diamante played volleyball. So I love that. That was really cool to see as well. And so I love this for Saweetie, and I'm really excited to see what she brings us in 2025. Moving on to number 7, we've got another country song, and my dad showed me this song, and the way he shows me songs, it's quite hilarious. He has that dad-like way of not really knowing the lyrics, but knowing the vibe, and I love him for that. And so this song that he showed me, he was like, well, the girl's not really singing. She's just, she's like talking, and it's 2 dudes and they're at a bar, I guess. And she's like in love with him or whatever. So this is You Look Like You Love Me by Ella Langley featuring Riley Green. Now, this one had 3 directors. So Wales Tony, John Park, and Ella Langley. Now, I love the Western saloon scene, the Western vibe. I think it's because, well, we know the obvious and I won't state it, but I think another reason is because I've been watching a bunch of Westerns lately, like 1883 and Bass Reeves. So this video, when I found it, it was really like a top video for me. Now, Ella is performing in this saloon and she's got the garb on, the nice all get up. And it also kind of gives me like this theater musical performance. And I like that the story unfolds and there ends up being like this bar fight, or rather a confrontation, kind of a showdown. But Ella is able to stop it with just a single look. And then they just go back to dancing and everyone looks happy. And I don't know, the only reason I would say why this video didn't score higher for me, we are almost we're kissed with the drama, or rather we're teased with the drama, because I would say this video breaks Chekhov's rule in the most sinister and kind of eerie way. And that is, we're shown a gun, but yet it never goes off, right? And so Ella and Riley, they kind of just ride off away into the sunset on horseback, and we go on our merry way. And so for me, following that rule, but I appreciate how they started to follow it. They made you think they were going to follow it, and then they broke that rule. So as we always say, it's like, learn the rules and then don't be afraid to break them, but, break them strategically. So they did a great job of like really making you think something was going to happen at the end. Like, I really thought the guy was going to follow them out, things were going to go ablazing. But that is why it scored at number 7. Coming in at number 6, we have He Will Follow You With His Eyes by Corinne Bailey Rae. This was directed by Gregory Berg, and it starts with an old school, like 60s, or maybe even later than that, or earlier than that, actually, advertisement, you could say, for Sweet Georgia Brown hair care. And it almost reminded me, the song itself, rather, almost reminded me of like the Supremes sound in the beginning. And then we get this like Billie Holiday type of performance where it's just her with the microphone and a spotlight, and she's in this gorgeous red dress. And the cinematography is really dreamy and smoky. Like, I love the colors in this visual, and everything is just really regal and chic, especially with the location and the set design. And as far as the song itself, I love this style for Corinne. I think this is a breath of fresh air. Everyone knows her for Put Your Records On, and that, of course, is a great song, and I think it still stands the test of time. Something about this song for me, though, it's fun, it's innovative, it takes you on a journey, and it plays around with production. And I think that the visual itself also ties it all in together and makes it a great package. a lot of the times I will listen to a new song while watching the music video, like all in one. And so that's how I found this song. And everything together is what really sold it for me. Now, coming in at number 5, we have Littlefoot Bigfoot by Childish Gambino. Now, him being on this list is really no surprise. I mean, he's always a joy to watch. He's always going to bring something fresh and creative, and this was no different. This was directed by Hiro Murai. I pray I'm pronouncing that correctly. And this visual was fun, yet wild and a touch unsettling. I'm sure I've mentioned this before, but I really enjoy black and white film. And this visual is set in like the 20s, 30s, or maybe even 40s time period. I'm sorry, don't quote me. I'm not entirely sure. I just know it's back yonder, right? And so Childish Gambino and these two other guys are at a nightclub performing in front of a bunch of like drunk patrons, and Quinta Brunson makes an appearance, and she essentially warns them and says they aren't responsible for whatever happens to their instruments, including their body. Now, he's also warned not to make eye contact with the front row, and yet in Childish Gambino, fashion challenges that. And I think that's when things start to go awry. Now, if you're familiar with Childish Gambino's music videos, you know he likes to have these big moments. And so one that I noticed was one of the patrons was getting a little fussy, and he grabs his pistol and he starts walking towards Childish Gambino to cause harm. But it's flipped, and Childish Gambino is dancing and ends up being the one taking out the guy by mistake. And now there's this long, awkward pause, and you think it's about to get tense and really people are about to get really, really irate. But the dynamic flips on its head. It like instantly changes. This one guy starts laughing as if the guy who got taken out deserved it and he was a nuisance. I don't know the story behind the story, but you know, everyone seems to be happy and they clap their hands and they're finally invested in the song. Now, the end takes a weird turn for me in that Young Nudi's feature is at the end of the song. And so now we're in his point of view. And we essentially see him as this like larger than life kind of person. And he's sitting over by the train tracks where I'm assuming the club is. And so now the club is like this miniature model in a way. And Young is looking down on the club. And, you know, it was a slightly random way to end the song and the visual. And it kind of also swiftly took me out of the scene and out of the visual in a sense as a spectator. But when I sat back and I thought about it and watched it a few times, I was like, okay, there's a deeper meaning here, which of course in Childish Gambino fashion, there's always a deeper meaning. But it was a nice touch that I wasn't expecting. Moving on to number 4, we have Taste by Sabrina Carpenter. This was directed by one of my favorite music video directors, Dave Meyers. Now, Sabrina likes to have fun. We know this. She's quirky, she's goofy, she's everything, right? She is a lot of fun. This visual opens up with like the Halloween font. So you already know that some stuff is about to go down. You know, there's weapons and different devices on the bed, and it kind of reminds me of that movie Ready or Not. And so it also opens up with like this lullaby that kind of foreshadows the visual ahead. And I think it's all in the details. That this visual had a lot of details, a lot of production design went into this music video, and I love it. Like, you don't notice it at first, but then it's like you see the Prada lipstick, and then she picks it up and she's putting it on and using, you know, one of the weapons as a mirror. Like, genius. It's just really fun, right? And I love the back and forth with her and Jenna Ortega as they try to see who can unalive each other at the best. I don't know. I think it's fun, it's whimsical, it's comical, and that's really why it scored so high on the list. Now, what got me was the twist at the end when Jenna thinks she has won the battle, right? Because we're fighting and doing all this stuff. And then sadly, she comes to find that it's her lover in the pool. And of course, while they're attending the funeral, Jenna and Sabrina leave as friends and they're talking about their shared experiences of dating the same guy and his ex, I guess you could say. So that's why it came in at number 4. Moving on to number 3, I would say this was the video of the year. This sparked a lot of things. We're not going to get into it, but coming in at number 3, we have Hiss by Megan Thee Stallion. Now, what Texan would I be if I didn't put Megan on here, right? Right. So, directed by Douglas Bernhardt, I would say there's a lot to this visual. Now, the snake motif was perfect. We already knew we were getting a snake era, right? A snake something or other. So it starts with the egg, and then we're seeing her strung up in these veins, I guess you could say. And we've got 3 primary colors. We've got red, black, and white. Now, I believe that the red, of course, symbolizes the love or maybe even a little bit of rage and hate. And then the blacks, of course, chic and mellow everything out. And then the white, purity. There was even some silver. Tina Snow had some silver on. But I don't know. Everything about this visual was very innovative. I mean, can we talk about the brains? The multiple booties, should I say, that make up the brains? Like, it's one of those, like, keep my name out your mouth, but rather, how could you if I'm constantly on your mind? Like, ooh, girl, chef's kiss. Every time I watch this visual, I notice something new. Like, there's so much. I mean, think about it. Like the multiple TV screens, again, showing this obsession that people have with her. And then, of course, Tina Snow comes and graces us. And it's perfect. We get like this Victoria moment. And if you're not sure what that is, it's a musical that Julia Andrews was in, one of my favorite musicals. But essentially, or if you've ever seen Glee, okay, they did a moment like this where it was like half masculine on one side and half feminine on the other side, as in the dress, what she was wearing, all right? So we also get that. And it's not to say that she was playing a guy on one side and a female on the other. It was simply just showing the duality of herself. And that's why it scored so high and came in at number 3. I could talk about the song all day. First of all, she talks about feeling like Mariah Carey. Now we should all want to feel like Mariah Carey. I'm just saying, I mean, queen. But anyway, I won't get too much into the details of the song, but the visual, if you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend. Coming in at number 2, we have Oldie Station by 21 Pilots. This was directed by Mark Eshelman, and they've worked with him quite a bit on several visuals. And this visual itself kind of reminds me of their music videos from 2020, as in it's very deconstructed. And I noticed that a lot with this Clancy album and all of the music videos that they have done for it. It's very DIY, yet larger than life at the same time. And out of all of the music videos they did for Clancy, this was one of my favorites. And so that's why it came in at number 2. First off, we're in the snow, we're in the cold, and you notice the camera keeps getting wiped every 15 seconds or so. And you're like, what's in the way? Like, what's going on? We get like a bird's eye view. We get to back up and we see Josh, who's the drummer. He's moving these like PCV pipes to the back for this like man-made assembly that's keeping this pulley going that the camera is on. Now, eventually the camera falls over and it just becomes a whole mess. And I think that is the main reason why I really like this music video. I think it just kind of, not the mess part, but more the DIY part. It shows and like encourages and inspires people to just get out there, get a camera and shoot something. But of course, once the camera falls over and it becomes a quote unquote, air quotations, mess, it becomes that larger than life that really makes 21 Pilots and this music video stand out. Another thing that I found really interesting is that it's something I hadn't noticed before, and I had to do a quick little research on it, but there is black paint or what even looks like mud on Tyler's hands and neck, the lead singer. And it's almost like, it seems like with each visual from Clancy that I watched, it became more present and darker. And so I was like, okay, do the story behind the story. I need to know. And essentially, the short and skinny, I guess it was a creation from Blurry Face. And so transforming it over to Clancy, it kind of symbolizes this freedom and hope from this grip of insecurity. And it's an element that really enriches the storyline and makes it more compelling and shows you that mental health is important and should be talked about more. And even through music, it can be expressed, and even visually, it can be expressed. And I've just really admired that. And so, yeah, I just had to learn that. And because I was like, am I going crazy, or is it in every video he's got something on his hands? What's going on? So yeah, that is the short and skinny on that. Now, moving on to the top visual of 2024, the one that takes home the bacon is We Can't Be Friends by Ariana Grande. Of course, I had to end on a little bit of pop, right? This was directed by Christian Belslaver. I really hope I'm saying that correctly. Apologies if I'm not. And of course, the storyline is stellar in this visual. Now, the few visuals that we got from Ariana, first of all, thank you, because you were working on Wicked, and I know that right now acting is at the forefront. So the fact that you even felt inspired to give us an album, love you for that. And the visual itself, again, I watched this as listening to the song for the first time. That's a little package. And like I said, the storyline is stellar. Now we are at Brighter Days Incorporated. And I think that that's an interesting thing because, you know, there are brighter days ahead after a heartache, a heartbreak. And she is signing on the dotted line essentially to erase memories of someone that she shared her heart and her soul with. And I mean, that's a big deal. And watching her sign her name as Peaches, it made me think maybe that was something that he called her, like a nickname. And I don't know, it was, maybe that's not it. It's just my theory, but it was just a wild random thought that I have. Now, I really love the POV shots in the beginning. It puts us in her frame of mind as the nurse takes her vitals. And you can see like her anxiety, and it's being shown auditorily, right, as the music starts, and we get like the kick drum sound, and it sounds like her heartbeat is beating really quick because she's anxious in this moment. And then you see they go through each item and essentially replay the memory of how she collected that item, and we watch it disappear from view. I remember when I watched this the first time, I felt so emotional because it was just really vulnerable, and it's vulnerable to be with someone. And then I think even more so to go through an experience, although not real, although shock therapy is a real thing, but another topic for another day. But it's even more vulnerable to, and courageous, I would say, to want to forget it and erase those memories. And it's really painful, rather. I would say some of the choices were a bit comical in a sense. Now, like instead of him giving her a bracelet, it changes into a dog collar. And then there's like this really cute, I'm assuming it was a golden doodle, sitting on the couch with her and watching TV. And then at the end of the procedure, after everything, she's happy and she's thanking the medical staff. And then something that really got me was, they incinerate the belongings. And it's almost like, when someone transitions and there's a cremation, yet Peaches is not going back to pick up the remains, and rather they're going to stay there and maybe just be discarded of in the trash. And then the final test at the end, they cross paths, but ultimately they don't notice each other, and they're both with someone else, whether it's a lover or just friends, but they don't notice each other. And I found that part interesting as well, because she erased him from the memories, but does that also too mean that he doesn't remember her either? Like, what, say he had seen her, he would have looked at her with such love in his eyes, and she would have just looked at him so blankly, like, I don't know why you're looking at me like that. I don't know who you are. So there was a lot to unpack with this visual, and that is why it came in at number 1 for me. So that was my top music videos of 2024. But what about the albums that really shined? What music were you guys listening to? Let's go through and see what I was listening to. So I'm going to pull up my Apple Replay, and we're going to go through just a few stats. So we're just going to go with the top 5. My top 5 artists: number 5, Fall Out Boy; 4, SZA; 3, Doja Cat; 2, Beyonce; and of course, number 1, Ariana Grande. I mean, that makes sense. Eternal Sunshine was definitely on repeat. You know why? Because they say I listened to her for 2,274 minutes compared to Fall Out Boy, 903 minutes. Now, my top songs for the year: I played Enough Miami by Cardi B 57 times, Espresso, Sabrina Carpenter 59 times, FYS by Chloe 60 times, Yes and by Ariana Grande 64 times, and a whopping 98 plays for Doja Cat's What You Mean freestyle. Now, I think I've mentioned this before. I have a revenge playlist, and this song is number 1 on that playlist. It makes me feel something. It really helps me. If I'm mad, it helps me, because I got a lifelong career. You make a living is an affirmation for me, okay? That's my goal in life. Now, top albums, of course, number 1 is Eternal Sunshine. Number 2, Cowboy Carter, because now we will get into this later on, but Linda Martell is somebody that everyone should know, okay? The first Black female country music singer. And I think, upon my research, I believe she performed at the Grand Ole Opry, I think 13 or 15 times. So that was one of the reasons that this album was so huge for me. Number 3, Scarlet to Claude, Doja Cat's deluxe album of Scarlet. Coming in number 4, we have Dopamine by Normani. Listen, she got a song on there that samples Pimp C, I believe. Just very Houston, okay? And love that song down. And then, of course, number 5, Sugar Honey Iced Tea by Lotto. So those were the top 5 albums, but some others that I have to shout out really quick that didn't really make it super high on the list. I really love Remy Wolf's Big Ideas. Toro and Motorcycle were some of my favorite songs off that album. Big X The Plug, Take Care. Big X The Plug and That Mexican OT rep Texas beautifully. Love it. Another album I really liked was Luke Combs. He came out with Fathers and Sons. Would love to see him in concert. Of course, 21 Pilots, Clancy. Tyler, the Creator, Chromacopia. Super fun. Also, one of my friends was on the album, and I'm so proud of her. Love the song Sticky. Shout out to her. You gotta praise your friends where you do, right? So super proud of her on that. Another album that really took the cake for me this year was Lucky Day, Algorithm. So I would love to hear in the comments what you were listening to in 2024. And I'm excited to see what comes out in 2025. I'm always excited for new music. So Let's keep rocking and rolling. But hey, that's a wrap, oldies. Thank you for joining me today on That Old Soul Show for the old souls with fresh takes. If you loved today's episode, please leave a review. It would help me out tremendously, and share it with your fellow oldies, your fellow old souls. We could all gather in this little hut together and talk about music and movies and all the things visual and creative. Now, I will be back in a few short weeks with some fresh content, and we're going to dive into a little more film next year. Just a little bit more. We're still going to talk about the music videos and keep up with those, but I'm really excited to give you guys some fresh content, and really just grateful that you're here with me. So I hope you have a fun and safe New Year's, and that 2025 is amazing for you, and that you meet whatever goal you set your mind to. Bye for now, oldies.